Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining. If you're still trickling in, this is lightning strike response, accelerating third-party risk management in the post-SRS era. So quick introductions for today's speakers. I'm Steve, 20 years in threat intelligence, founder of Hack Notice.
Hey, my name is Manish Walther-Puri. I have a wandering background and mostly been focusing on cyber risk and strategic risk. Recently, I worked for City of New York as director of cyber risk, and I've also focused on supply chain and cyber and thinking about critical infrastructure as well. Excited to be here.
Okay, great. So today we're going to be talking about how you can navigate the flood, and that flood is data breaches. So we are really in an exponential growth in data breaches. We hear about data breaches all the time. Unfortunately, breaches these days hit the news, and we all have analysis paralysis. We don't know, is this good? Is this bad? Is it big? Is it small? And unfortunately, it just becomes another alert for us. We all have alert overload, and often we just start ignoring these events. And that's not what security needs. What you're going to leave here today with is a faster time to knowledge, a pre-built response framework, and a mindful decision to take action or to not take action. And not taking action is always a very valid way to handle a breach, depending on what type of breach it is. So this is the framework. If you have to leave early, take a screenshot, take a photo. This is what we're going to be leading up to today. This is how you can take in a breach, understand it, look at it through 3 different lenses, look at it low, medium, and high, and get an output. And based on the output of the framework, you can then take action. Your actions can be pre-built. So this is all getting everything set up ahead of time so that you can take action quickly, and that action is reliable and repeatable.
One of the things that we struggle with in general, and a question that we ask ourselves is, how bad is it? That's notionally the question that we're trying to answer. And that's a security frame. How bad is it? Most other people ask the question, does it affect me? That's how they triage if they should pay attention or not. So what does bad mean? Generally, it means severity. And we have different ways of talking about severity. We're going to introduce a different way to talk about severity here. But severity doesn't capture everything. What if it's really widespread? What if you have the blue screen of death on millions of computers? Blue screen of death is bad. It's not horrendous, but it's really widespread. That is a different kind of scale of bad. And then another way to think about scale of bad is over time. How long is it going to take till we get back to where we were before? We asked ourselves this question, fortunately, in the middle of the pandemic. Is there a new normal? When are we going to get back to whatever the normal was? These are other ways that we think about how bad something is. So everyone's seen this This Is Fine comic. I don't know if they will always take in the full comic, because what's important is at the end, he's still sitting in the fire and his face is melting. It's still pretty bad. So the good news about how bad is that we collectively have experience of thinking about other kinds of bad. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. There are ways to evaluate how bad something is. And that measurement involves some kind of assessment. So you might, for hundreds of years we thought, how do we think about this wind that's going to destroy everything? Now we have scientific ways to measure it and compare it. So that's what we're going to draw from. We looked at a couple different scales, and you might be familiar with some of these. You know the Richter scale. And what's interesting about the Richter scale is it's not linear, it's nonlinear, because it's meant to measure the release of energy from an earthquake. That's very different than a wildfire, which has a fire severity index, talks about acreage and how fast something is moving. And then the hurricane, we're affected by this right now. A lot of people are impacted by Hurricane Debbie or Hurricane Beryl last week. This happens a fair amount. Everyone notionally knows category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. that's talking about wind speed, landfall, and potential damage. So we have these ways to measure and talk about it in some kind of standardized way. What that lends itself to is those scales provide a standardized way to measure. So we have natural disasters, but then there's also other kinds of incidents, like an environmental incident, where something happens and then it diffuses air quality, pollution, and these two are linked. If you remember, last year there was wildfire in North America, in Canada, and the smoke was coming down and affecting air quality. Suddenly everybody was talking about parts per million. So we have these different metrics to talk about it. This is something that we're missing in cybersecurity. We don't have clear, consistent language to measure the scale. So here is our attempt to introduce a framework that is practical and accessible. Steve's going to talk about that.
Great. So you saw it a little bit in the spoiler, but this framework has 3 lenses to take a look at any data breach, any breach. It's severity, scope, and fallout. So let's talk about severity. This is often thought about in volume. Number of records in the data breach, number of users, number of systems impacted. So this could be, if it's every endpoint in your business, this could be millions of systems. So we're looking at volume, and we're trying to understand, based on this volume, is it going to be everything? Is it going to be partial? Is this going to be a lot of media attention because every device now has a blue screen of death?
And a key question that you can ask, or that we thought would be helpful to separate out where you are in there, is, does it affect a preponderance of a particular population, or is it specifically targeted? You will see this in the headlines. Affects X% of the US population. That's what's there in AT&T. Or national security informants, celebrities, OPM. This is a targeted population. I'm going to separate them out.
The next is scope. So all of these are 1 through 5, low to high. And scope is looking at granularity and sensitivity. So a great way to think about scope is this data we've seen before? Is this brand new data? Is this top secrets information? Is it every private text message between every person in the US? You're looking at privacy, you're looking at secrecy, security, and the number of attributes that are included in the data set.
One to really differentiate that Steve mentioned, it doesn't include data that's already been exposed. That's a question that some of us know to ask, but is a really important differentiator. Is this recycled creds or not? Is it lifetime data? You can't get your face print, your fingerprint, your social. And so that helps us differentiate a bit. And this is where, again, we talk about OPM. Ashley Madison, 23andMe, genetic data. Can't reset your genetic data.
The last one's fallout. So fallout, you really want to think about what's going to be the end result of this. Is this going to take days, weeks, months, years to clean up? Is this going to be something that has a consistent, persistent fallout? Is this going to be just a domino effect of identity theft, fraud, other breaches? So you need to think about what's the end result and what's the long tail of this event.
Yeah, and what we've seen, you know this if you've experienced security incidents, there's always a fallout around security, right? And remediation, containment, all of that. And then often there's a corollary legal. But beyond that, that's where you get to a higher scale where the fallout is going to be longer. There's going to be regulatory issues, additional scrutiny, a change in technology, a switch in supplier. We're going to talk through later some case studies where we've seen this that separates out higher scale, deep, larger scale in terms of fallout.
All right, so this is the output. And this is all around, this framework's goal is to help you determine time to action, increasing time to action or deciding not to take action, criticality of actions, and steps that you need to implement. So we're going to go from 1 to 5. 1, low impact. If something's a 1, we're going to monitor it, but we're not going to take action. We're making that an intentional decision. 2 is we're going to increase monitoring, maybe do some targeted checks, but still, we're not in action mode. 3 is there's increased security. We're going to begin investigations. We're going to take some actions and prepare to escalate. 4 is high risk. You need to take immediate response, contain the issue, do a detailed investigation. And 5 is this is a full-blown, full-scale incident response situation. Get the incident response team together, and you need to take immediate action to safeguard the company that may disrupt business as normal. So these are going to be more aggressive actions that may even cause some business disruption.
And in this scale, you'll see it around 3. It's where you change your posture because your operating condition is going to shift. And everybody kind of knows when you get a 5. Like, that's clear. No one needs to say, it's a 5. It's a 5. The question is below there, shift. Where do you change what you need to, where you need to put your resources? So let's go back. Remember, we talked about earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes. What we're inviting you to think about is that data breaches are more like oil spills. How do we measure oil spills? How would you hear about them? The thousands of gallons that have been spilled? Is that really accessible to us? We don't work in that field. That sounds like a lot. Is that a lot? 60 million records? That sounds like a lot. Is that a lot? It's not really helpful for us. But what we do think about with oil spills are 2 things. One, that it's going to affect the ecosystem over a period of time. Yes, you're going to try and contain it. You want to understand that. But the damage, so to speak, is changing. The currents are shifting. How much, how wide that is. And the second is that our best effort to try and explain the impact from that is when we see things like, unfortunately, dead fish and pelican covered in oil and having to go in and manually clean up. So thinking about it as a kind of oil spill is a more effective translation, we think, and how to think about the scale of it.
So let's do some examples. So in this example, we're using the framework. This is going to be a high output example. So this is CDK Global. If you're not familiar with CDK Global, it was an intentional event. The Black Suit ransomware gang broke in. They ransomed and encrypted all of their infrastructure systems. So all the systems were ransomed and all of their infrastructure shut down. So in terms of severity, this is high. This is all systems, all departments, all of the company. In terms of scope, this was a medium. So customers, operations, partnership orders, financial details, but nothing secrets, nothing that's going to be, even if I use them, it's not like my business is about to die. It's infrastructure, but it's not secret. Fallout's high. Since it's all geographies, all systems, we're expecting business disruption, business continuity issues. We're expecting this to be a long fallout. Basically, we can't do normal operations until it's fixed. Output ends up being an average of those 3. That's a 4, that's a high. So if I have a high, I'm saying, okay, I need to take immediate action. I need to take action because my critical infrastructure is going to go down. I need to safeguard the financial accounts that were just exposed. And I need to go ahead and take action so that we can do business on Monday. And that means pulling out pen and paper and the old systems that we have that don't rely on CDK Global.
Yeah, 2 things are critical here. One, it doesn't take too long. We tried to find a balance here between rigor and speed and being able to do this evaluation relatively quickly. Because the other thing that's happening, and you know this, is that there's other breaches happening at the same time. It's not like there's one and you're like, okay, let me just evaluate this. There's like multiple that are coming in, so you have to trade them off against each other. Remember, again, scale allows comparison and measurement of impact.
Yep. And what you'll see in this next example as well is we have reliable ways of evaluating these breaches, and you can pre-bake a lot of this intelligence. So this is going to be a low low output, a low severity, and what we have here is evolve, bake, and trust. Now, you may have heard of this one. The ransomware gang, Lockbit, said that they are ransoming the Federal Reserve. That sounds really scary. Turns out that the data they got access to is a data set just for evolve, bake, and trust. So yes, it was an ongoing event, but it was partial. It was one data set. Severity is low. Severity on this one is a 1 because it was just one data set. They may have gotten access to one endpoint, certainly not all of evolve, bake, and trust. Scope is 3, it's a medium. It had payment processing data, customer relationship data for the bank. Okay, so that's potentially bad. You want to safeguard your payment processing, but it's not top secret. And then fallout 1 is low. Evolve, bake, and trust never went down. They kept being a bank. Their customers kept getting service. And so you average that together, it's a 1.6, it's a low. And so if you use evolve, bake, and trust, you want to monitor it, you want to see if it gets any worse, but you may not have to take any action based on these events. So in conclusion, our whole goal here is we want to take what's good for other industries, take what's good for natural disasters, bring it into cybersecurity so we have a reliable, repeatable, reasonable way of getting to faster time to knowledge, getting to faster time to action, and having a reliable way of deciding if we're going to take action or not. So that's the end goal here. This is what the framework does.
Our goal here is to start a conversation. So please come talk to us if you have ideas. Our goal is to get to a place where the average person can think about and understand a data breach in the same way that they can understand a hurricane, a tornado, or an earthquake without being a seismologist or a meteorologist or any other specialty. So we welcome the conversation. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Yeah, if you would like to discuss more, go in more depth into the framework and how we sourced it, go through a few more examples, figure out what the next domino effect breach is going to be, please visit us at our booth, Startup City, booth 119. This is my calendar, my contact information. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the
Thank you.
Today.